Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 7, knowledge of the absolute text, number 19. Bhavanam Jamanamante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. Bhavanam Jamanamante Janamam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sarmahatma Sudurlabha. Jamanamante Janamam Prapadyate Vasudevamiti Sudurlabha. Jamanamante Yanavan Mamapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. Dami. Bhavanam Jamanamante Jnanavam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. Bhavanam, many, Janmanam, repeated births and deaths. Ande, after. Jnanavan, one who's in full knowledge. Mam, unto me. Prapadyante, surrenders. Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. Sarvam, everything. Iti, thus. Sa, that. Mahatma, great soul. Sudurlabha, very rare to see. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. After many births and deaths, he was actually in knowledge, surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Purport: the living entity, while executing devotional service or transcendental rituals, after many, many births, may actually become situated in transcendental pure knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of spiritual realization. In the beginning of spiritual realization, while one is trying to give up one's attachment to materialism, there is some leaning towards impersonalism. But when one is further advanced, he can understand that there are activities in the spiritual life and that these activities constitute devotional service. Realizing this, he becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrenders to Him. At such a time, one can understand that Lord Krishna's mercy is everything, that He is the cause of all causes, that this material manifestation is not independent from Him. He realizes the material world to be a perverted reflection of spiritual variegatedness and realizes that in everything there is a relationship with the Supreme Lord Krishna. Thus he thinks of everything in relation to Vasudeva, or Shri Krishna. Such a universal vision of Vasudeva precipitates one's full surrender to the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna as the highest goal. Such surrendered great souls are very rare. This verse is very nicely explained in the 3rd chapter, verse 14 and 15 of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Sahasra Shirsha Purusha Sahasraksha Sahasrapat Sa Bhumim Vishvato Ritva Tya Tishtad dasangulam purusha evadam sarvam tadbhutam yatsha bhavyam atam utamritat vayesyano yad ane nat tirohati. In the Chandogya Upanishad is said, Navai vacho na chakshumsi shat shrotrani na mamsti yat namsi yat chakshite prana iti eva chakshite prano hi yeva vaitani sarvani bhavanti. What's that? Well, you got to get a different edition of the Bhagavad Gita. This one doesn't have that. This is the new one. Maybe you can read it. What the translation was.
Lord Krishna has thousands of heads, thousands of eyes, and thousands of feet. Entirely encompassing the whole universe, he still extends beyond it by 10 fingers breadth. He is in fact this entire universe. He is all that was and all that will be. He is the Lord of immortality and all that is nourished by food.
Yes, I assume by the time you get to the new Bhagavad Gita, you already know Sanskrit. So they don't have to have the translation anymore. In the body of a living being, neither the power to speak, or the power to see, nor the power to hear, nor the power to think is the prime factor. It is life which is the center of all activities. Similarly, Lord Vasudeva, or the personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, is the prime entity in everything. In this body, there are powers of speaking, of seeing, of hearing, of mental activities, etc. But these are not important if not related to the Supreme Lord. And because Vasudeva is all-pervading and everything is Vasudeva, the devotee surrenders in full knowledge. Bhagavad Gita 7:17 and 11:40. Bonam jamanamante gyanamam prapadyate Vasudeva sarvamiti sarmahatma sudurlavaha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyadyade Satarane. Krishna has been speaking Bhagavad Gita since time immemorial, which is quite a long time. He's had a lot of practice. Some trillions and trillions of times he's repeated the Bhagavad Gita, so he has it pretty much down, exactly what his strategy is. So part of his strategy, he always takes the reader to one conclusion, and then he shows the other side, and then he comes back again. I forget what they call it in logic, Paroka, and we present one argument, then someone else presents another argument, and then you give the synthesis of the argument. So that's Krishna's technique in the Bhagavad Gita. He's brought us to the point of surrender, and now he's going to tell us about people who don't surrender to him. People who surrender to the demigods, people who surrender to the impersonal Brahman, people who don't recognize Krishna, and then he says why they don't surrender. Because they're mudhas, or they're sinful, or they're foolish, they're sinful, they're atheistic, or they're deceitful. Then he says at the end of the Bhagavad Gita that one who knows him as a governing principle of all the material manifestation, the one underlying all the demigods, the one, the object of all sacrifice, then he alone can know me at the time of death. So here we've come up to the idea that knowledge, someone who has knowledge, surrenders to Krishna. So what is that knowledge? Knowledge is that we're not this body and that Krishna is God. That's the whole knowledge. It's not they get their PhD in Harvard and then they surrender to Krishna. No, it's the exact opposite. One who actually sees how all this energy that we see around us all belongs to Krishna. And that it's all meant for Krishna's enjoyment. And that we're also, if we want to be happy, we have to be part of Krishna's enjoyment. We have to do things to please him. As he's arranging the material energy to satisfy our desires, so we should utilize the material energy to satisfy his desires. Our desires in the material energy are perverted desires. They're not good for ourselves or anyone else. But Krishna's desires in the material energy are good for us and they're good for everyone else. So that's what we have to choose. Either we become part of the Krishna machine or we become part of the Maya machine. But even the Maya machine is run by Krishna. Mostly to chastise and torture the living entities in the material world so that they finally surrender to him. So here Krishna is recommending that if we actually cultivate real knowledge, not just material knowledge, but knowledge of things as they actually are, which began when Krishna told us that we're not this body. Now we can forget that very easily, or we can even remember it, and it's all kind of vague. I'm not this body, then who am I? Because it's a question of experience also. It's not a question of just theoretical knowledge. Right now we're walking around in these bodies, and if we don't feed it, these bodies, we feel very uncomfortable. We can't say when we're starving, well, I'm not the body, big deal. It's only the body. Now, a very advanced devotee can do that. One is very advanced in consciousness, but if we're not on that stage, then we have to cultivate knowledge. And knowledge is, again, as Krishna has come up to this point, he's talking about 4 kinds of people who never surrendered to him. And I'll explain them again. Those who are the foolish, those who are the sinful, those who are the deceitful, and those who are atheistic. Now, the whole society has been trained up with sinful, foolish, deceitful, and atheistic people. And we amongst them have been trained up in the same way. That was our education. How to become sinful, how to become foolish, how to become sinful, how to become deceitful, and how to become atheistic. As a matter of fact, the more you become sinful, foolish, of course, foolish people, and the sinful people are the ones who are exploited by those who are deceitful. And the atheists, they couldn't care less about exploiting everyone because they're God. Whatever they do is right. And the deceitful, well, those are the modern advertisers. The whole society, as Prabhupada said, is just there's only 2 classes of people in modern society, the cheaters and the cheated. The cheaters, they run all the communication system, the educational system, and they train people up so that they become candidates being cheated. And if you play along with them, then you can also learn how to cheat others. So then you become cheated by the big cheaters, but you can cheat the smaller cheaters. But if someone is honest, then they stick out like a thumb, and they got to get rid of them because they'll disturb the whole system. So it's not recommended to be too honest. And what is in the society of foolish, it's foolish. It's the society of something is foolish to be wise. Did you ever hear that? What's that? Well, now you heard it. It's something like in the society of foolish people, it's folly to be wise. because people will not like it. That's modern society. Just like if everyone is devious, everyone is going against the Vedic culture. And if you're not going against the Vedic culture, then for them, you're devious. Just like Hiranyakashipu thought his son was a demon. What's wrong with you? You grew up in a respectable family, and now you're turning to this demoniac god called Vishnu. You had a chance to be born as Amarka and Sananda was telling Prahlad. You were born in a respectable Asura family or a Daitya family. And who's contaminated you with this philosophy of Krishna consciousness? Just like when Haridas Thakur was before the Qazi, there was some complaint that Haridas Thakur was a Muslim and he was chanting Hare Krishna. So they arrested him and they brought him before the Qazi. And the Qazi said, you have the chance to be born in a pious Muslim family. How is it that you become contaminated with this Hare Krishna? So Haridas Thakur said, well, some people, many Hindus, they become Muslims. So if one Muslim becomes a Hindu, what's the big deal? You'll still have a lot of Muslims. The Qazi didn't appreciate that. He said, well, the only rectification for your sinful activity of converting into a Hindu is we're going to kill you. That will purify you. Thank you very much. So then they tried to kill him. They beat him in 22 marketplaces. And it didn't work out so well. For them, at least. So they think knowledge actually says in the Bhagavad Gita that adharmam dharma itiya manyate tamasavrita sarvatam viparitamscha buddhisapartha tamasi. In the mode of ignorance, they say what is religion, they say is not religion. And what is not religion, they say is religion. And therefore, they always strive in the wrong direction. So in modern society, there's absolutely, as Prabhupada said, there's no education about the soul. They're not even interested in the soul. If you go to the most prestigious college and you raise the question, sir, can you please tell me what is your opinion, what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that our bodies are changing, but we ourselves within the body are not changing. What do you think about that? Next question. Anyone else has a question? They don't even want to hear it. It's not even entertainable. Because it would just upset the apple cart. Therefore, the people are, the last thing they want to hear is about God. I mean, most of these certain class of people. Other people are innocent. They may become a little attracted if it's not too threatening to them. Just like there was they have the Mardi Gras in America. You heard of the Mardi Gras? Never heard of the Mardi Gras? Where have you been? Mardi Gras. It's a big festival in America, New Orleans. What's that? You don't know about Mardi Gras? Anyhow, for 1 week, they have this party. 2 million people go to New Orleans, and the whole idea is a marathon for 2 weeks to see how many sinful activities you can commit publicly, and there's absolutely no restriction. Killing animals on the street, illicit sex, everyone is intoxicated 2 weeks straight for the marathon. So one day the devotees decided to go out and do Harinam during the Mardi Gras. As soon as they stepped out, they began to chant Hare Krishna. The police immediately came and arrested them all, put them in jail over the weekend, and charged them with disturbing the peace. So this is demonic civilization. It's like going to Ravana's kingdom, and doing book distribution. The police will come immediately. They'll arrest you, confiscate your books, and burn them. But this Bhagavad Gita is actually for people who want it honest. Sumeda-san, who have a little brains left, who haven't really converted their brains into, as Prabhupada said, cow dung. They have a little bit of substance left of thinking. So they can understand that the body's changing, but they themselves are not changing. And that there is a controller behind the universe. So that's knowledge. Now, even a basically person with half a brain and at least 20 seconds of attention, which is pretty rare nowadays, have that much brain and 20 seconds of attention. They have to accept that there is a superior force that's controlling the universe. It didn't come about by accident. Because otherwise, how is it that everything, everywhere, all the time is changing? So this material nature, which we can see, which is basically made of substances that appear to be solid, that appear to be reactive, radioactive, or energetic, we could say, that are moving, that are cohesive. There are different varieties of material energy. All of them are changing all the time. But what's changing everything all the time is not changing. So what's changing everything is superior to everything that's changing. And that's beyond the material energy. Otherwise, it would change. So everyone has to accept time as the supreme in the universe. Otherwise, they're completely crazy. There's no sense talking to someone not completely crazy. They're just basically crazy. If they can't understand how time is changing everything, and time is supreme, that there's a force that's right here now, that everyone is observing, that's supreme within the universe. And it's changing things intelligently. It's not just arbitrarily changing things. Because otherwise, how can the sun, which is supposed to be millions of times bigger than this Earth planet, come up exactly on time every day and set exactly on a schedule? So time is not arbitrary. Time, which is changing everything, is changing with quite a bit of intelligence. Otherwise, how can we eat food, and that food in the course of time is converted into either into the different parts of our body, or it's eliminated, or it's not digested properly. So how is it that there's a mechanism for eating something, and without our intervention, without our conscious understanding or experience, how everything is being converted into different types of substances, which basically keeps this body working. And it's not going on by our arrangement. So there's some time which is changing everything, including all these transformations that we see even within our body, within the universe. It's all going on very intelligently. So that means that there's an intelligent person behind this universe, and he has energies which is beyond our control, beyond our conception. And one can't accept that, then they're more or less, they're on the same level as the animals. But that's all right, because that's how people have been trained up in modern society. They've been trained up to become animals, because they're not really presented with any real philosophy or knowledge. And when they hear real philosophy and knowledge, they discount it, thinking if it was real knowledge and philosophy, then all these learned scientists and philosophers and politicians, they would have given us that knowledge, or they would have understood it themselves and expressed it. But Prabhupada said, actually, there are learned scientists and philosophers, but these aren't them. Prahlad Maharaj, Shiva, Lord Shiva, Shukadeva Goswami, that these are actually the real philosophers. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. These are the actual philosophers. So if we can catch up the hint, then at least in this lifetime, we can utilize our energies to try to realize who Krishna is. We can try to realize Krishna. And by realizing Krishna, gradually we'll realize our real selves, our real nature, which is to be, Krishna is unlimitedly blissful, unlimitedly loving, unlimitedly conscious, and we can get some experience of becoming practically on the same level as Krishna. So we have a choice. Either we can follow these people who are completely blind, or of course you say completely blind. They're not completely blind, they're just blind. Because they have some knowledge, but the knowledge is just a more sophisticated knowledge that the animals have. Because the animals also have some knowledge. If you want to catch a mouse, you can learn from a cat, more from a scientist. They're experts. So, but that's not our business, is catching mice. Similarly, if you want to learn how to control the material energy so you can get the maximum amount of sense gratification or squeeze whatever sense gratification you believe, then you can take shelter of the scientists. But ultimately, it's the same sense gratification over and over again. Maybe in the movies, the lights are changing a little faster. Maybe the heroes can jump a little higher than we can. Although it's all imaginative. It's all just phantasmagoria. But still, they know how to put it together like that. But it doesn't do us any good. Because what we really want to be is eternal. We want to be blissful. We want to be conscious of how to be eternally blissful. And that's only available through Krishna consciousness. Or anything which is on the same line of Krishna consciousness may help us on the path to becoming Krishna conscious. But ultimately, without becoming conscious of Krishna or Krishna's expansions, then we're just wasting our time. And we won't know who we are. Won't know who anyone else is. We won't know where we are. We won't know what to do. We don't know what's happening without becoming conscious of Krishna. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? Comments? We don't have a questionnaire here. Oh, you have a question? Okay. I asked the first question. Is there any questions? That was a question. So I got one answer.
So it is recommended that one should pray to Krishna to take everything or all attachments away and fully surrender to him. But personally, I find it really difficult to honestly pray like that.
Yeah, so why don't we just be honest? Just like I have a tendency to say completely, or this to that. We just want to take one little step, a baby step towards Krishna every day. Therefore, we're asked, because if we read Bhagavad Gita, unless we read Bhagavad Gita, the whole Bhagavad Gita, and we read it consistently, then it seems quite extreme. I mean, Krishna doesn't compromise in Bhagavad Gita. Well, if you want to surrender, you surrender. Anyhow, there are a lot of nice demigods. Besides impersonal Brahman, it's quite warm there, It's all seasonal, you don't have to. No, so we have to be honest and see where we're at, see if we can make a little progress. Therefore, Krishna doesn't say, he says many births and deaths. He doesn't expect, but on the other hand, if we take it too lax, many births and deaths, don't want to be fanatic, then we'll never go anywhere. So there has to be kind of like a balance between making some effort and not expecting to become self-realized overnight. Therefore, the standard is like Haridas Thakur, taking one pat of little drop of buttermilk every other day. But we don't do that because it's not possible. Because Haridas Thakur was living in the spiritual world. Raghunath Goswami was actually living in the spiritual world, and he was having 3 big feasts a day. Actually real food. He was actually getting real spiritual food there. So here he didn't really mind because he was living in a different place. But we're living in this place. And therefore, in the absence of actually experiencing reality with our spiritual senses, we have to accept what our limitations are in this world, under this sphere, and act accordingly. And at the same time, try to cultivate Krishna consciousness. So therefore, Parama Karuna Paudvijana Nityaya Gaurachandra Sabhavatara Sarashiramani Kevala Anandakanda Bhaja Bhaja Bhai Chaitanya Nitai Sudrida Vishvasakori Vishayacharya Serasamajya Mukhe Bolo Hari Hari. So these 2 laws, Gaur and Nitai, they've come. They're the most merciful, because they've introduced this chanting. So there's no hard, it's not difficult, but we have to regulate our sense gratification, that's all. It just has to be regulated. So not, every day we don't wake up and we think, well, chant my rounds and I'll eat for the rest of the day. We just eat what we need, we sleep as much as we need. We don't think that, most people, they think, as Prabhupada said, that in India, there were what's called coolies. They'd be running messages the master would give them some legal documents to run over to some other place, another legal office. So they take the legal document and they go to the park and sleep for 4 hours. Delivering the message and come back and say, oh, it's been 4 hours, What took you so long? Oh, it was so congested, They're probably getting like 50 pice a day, for their efforts. So they think 4 hours of sleep, get an extra 4 hours of sleep and get paid 50 pice for it. No, so our aim is not to catch an extra 4 hours of sleep, that's all. We get as much as we need, as we really need, and then spend some time in Krishna consciousness. Depends on who they are. Prabhupada in Bhagavad Gita says 6 hours of sleep. And he said anything more than that, you're in the mode of ignorance. And then, when Prabhupada was asked, 8 hours of sleep if you need it, 7, 8 hours. It probably wasn't a fanatic. Depends what you're doing. What's that? No, you have to see what you actually, so that you're awake.
I wake up, I get this feeling that I will get up, then I will be late of sleep, so then I just move along for some time.
What's that?
I wake up early.
Yeah, what's early?
Sometimes, I'm waking 2 times during the night, but let's say around 4, 3:30, 4, 5. 3:30 a lot of times. But then I have this feeling that if I will get up, I will be tired later. So then I just go back to sleep and try to sleep a bit sail.
That's all right. As long as you get the same amount of sleep. We can always go to sleep earlier, perhaps. Depends on your situation. But anyhow, 7 hours of sleep is. But the rest of the time we should do something for Krishna, that's all. And if you do something actually for Krishna during the day, then maybe you'll spend some time dreaming about Krishna at night. And that counts for devotional service too. Anything else? Thank you very much. Grantaraj Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande.